Design, especially workplace design, really does have the ability to impact people and change lives. I really do believe that. And I think that it's not just remote workers that are feeling like disconnected. It's definitely people that are showing up in the office, but they're still feeling alone when they're there. I think that's because we've dramatically changed the way we've worked in the last 5 years, but we haven't seen as much of a dramatic shift, I think, in the design of our office interiors to really like meet the change that's happening in the way we work.
Amber, welcome to the Future Work Podcast. It's really great to have you here. And gosh, Perkins&Will, one of the finest architectural firms in the world, and your role there has been just unbelievable. The new things that you've been doing. We talk a lot about a loneliness epidemic these days. How does design impact that? How can design impact that as it relates to space overall?
Design, especially workplace design, really does have the ability to impact people and change lives. I really do believe that. And I think that it's not just remote workers that are feeling like disconnected. It's definitely people that are showing up in the office, but they're still feeling alone when they're there. And I think that's because we've dramatically changed the way we've worked in the last 5 years, but we haven't seen as much of a dramatic shift, I think, in the design of our office interiors to really like meet the change that's happening in the way we work. So I just feel like a lot of the office spaces are still stuck in the past, designed for productivity and not necessarily, kind of keeping up with, just the fast paced changing nature of our work these days. And I really think that, what we're recommending to our clients is to focus, not to focus on productivity necessarily in the office, but on relationship building to really make an impact on this loneliness epidemic, to make people really feel that sense of belonging at work. And so, I do think there's lots of ways that workplace design can impact that.
It's funny. My wife and I got hooked on a Netflix program called Mr. Robot, and he's a cybersecurity fellow, and he works in a cybersecurity office as a technical engineer, and it's classic cube farm.
Yeah.
Okay, and everybody is prairie dogging, up and down, looking around, and little microcubes scrunched together, real close, but everybody's isolated.
Yeah.
Everybody's isolated. So, how do you take one of your ideals of functional inconvenience, which I love that idea of functional inconvenience? I love the term. In fact, some people think it's functionally inconvenient just to meet me. Uh, I get along with that. But how do you take the idea of functional inconvenience and erase the isolation found in classic cube farms? And I'll also comment that the
Right.
office environment this fellow's working in is not big. I'll call it 5,000 square feet,
Yeah.
maybe 4,000 or 3,000. It's not a big office. It's not a big glamorous corporate headquarters where design is a statement
Right. Right.
overall. How do you make something like that work? Because most office space is not corporate headquarters for Fortune 500 companies.
Right.
It's smaller organizations overall.
Functional inconvenience, definitely not my idea, but it's one of my favorite concepts to implement on any project, like big or small, because it really does change the way people interact in the space. So what it is, it's really like creating these like minor obstacles for people, but it encourages positive behaviors like social interaction. So the main thing, the best example, and the main thing that I try to do on all projects is, instead of having Classically, you'd have like little kitchenettes, like in every little corner of the office, so that people, it was thought to be convenient, right? Like you didn't want to have to
Right.
walk very far to get water or coffee. But then what we've realized over time is people get really siloed in their area of the office, even if it's small. Like you might not actually go to the other side of the floor,
Great.
right? Because you have everything you need right there. And that can lead to people feeling really lonely. They're kind of in their area. They only interact with their immediate team. And so when you get rid of those like dispersed kitchenettes and you create a big central hub, a communal hub where you that's the only place you have coffee, water, and you pull people together there. That really creates that interaction between departments and between people that you don't interact with necessarily in the day-to-day work, but it increases the likelihood of those like chance encounters and sparks, those relationships that you might never have otherwise.
Well, in the flexible workspace industry, let's take co-working
Yeah.
centers as an example. One of the design theories has always been to establish a centralized galley,
Yeah.
kitchen lounge, would be referred to generally as a lounge for that purpose, to draw everybody in there and even have casual work or
Right.
refreshment tables there.
Right.
And the purpose is to heighten the sense of community amongst people that are not related in
Right.
business.
Right.
And it's very, very effective, just keeping a social community atmosphere
Yeah.
going. And that's been used for decades and decades. And it's very effective
Yeah.
overall. But what do you see the most progressive design company or companies using? What are they doing, looking for in workspace tomorrow? Not yesterday, but tomorrow.
Yeah.
What are people trying to design for, and how is it changing the workplace? I used to have a executive assistant sat at the desk near my office. Now I still have an executive assistant, but it's an AI assistant.
Right. Right.
So AI is changing the personnel structure in organizations,
Yeah.
allowing for a lot of change. And what are the most progressive companies doing today that you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think um, it's like designing for the unknown, because there's just like work is changing so quickly, especially with AI, and obviously the increase in remote work. And so I think it's. I mean, we hear this a lot, but I can talk about some like practical ways to really design for like the unknown and for future flexibility, whether that be like expanding, workspace, or contracting workspace easily, or like transforming a space into something else.
Let me. I'm going to interrupt. I apologize, but I interrupt. You just said expanding or contracting
Yeah.
space more easily. Space usually from a you have a building.
Yep.
It's a certain size. You have the ownership of that building, let's call it a landlord, go back to an anachronistic term, let's call it a
Yeah. Yeah.
landlord. And then you have a tenant, another anachronistic term. But um, the tenant generally can't just add and shrink space conveniently on demand.
Yeah.
Only in a flexible workspace, only in a business or a co-working center does that happen conveniently.
Right.
So most people can't just do that. So how do you design that capability in?
Yeah. So we've had clients that have essentially designed their space from the beginning to be subleased, um, and so a portion of their floor, or maybe one example, they did their ground floor was designed with the intention of subleasing in mind, where they could expand into it if they needed to grow. But from day one, it was actually a co-working space that they they own or they had the main lease on, but then
Uh-huh.
they were actually creating their own co-working environment within their own office space, and their own people could work in it if they wanted just like a change of scenery. So it became this like extra amenity within their own suite, um, but it gave them that flexibility to grow into it eventually. But day one, it was designed to be a co-working space. So that's like one way that we're seeing that happen. And then, of course, like you mentioned, like just trying to get more and more flexible with the lease terms, um, is I think we're going to continue to see lease terms like move in that direction of the kind of co-working lease terms that you see. I think there's going to be a big change in like corporate real estate and the way leases are put together.
Well, the flexible workspace industry, and again, business, co-working,
Yeah,
services, et cetera, are now one of the largest tenant
exactly.
sectors in all property on a global basis. And they're contributing to that, although they generally are on either a long-term joint venture management contract
Yeah,
as opposed to a lease, something that looks more like a retail or a restaurant
right.
deal. And but they're taking a lot of space, but the buildings themselves aren't. To the first pioneer at that was Sam Zell with Equity Office
Yeah.
Properties going back into the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And he built, I want to say 58 of their high rises, they built a project called Smart Suites. And he took one floor, put on his own property management for the building on that floor, and then they built flex space, spec flex space. And I remember being in a meeting with him and a couple other luminaries in the real estate, and it was Hines had asked him in this meeting. He says, "Well, Sam, why the heck are you doing this? What does this? What the heck are you doing?"
Yeah.
This was in the 90s. And he says, "What the heck are you doing?" And Joe looked at him and says, "Well, I want to be able to service the entire life cycle of my client,
Right.
not just the larger life cycle, not just the mature life cycle. I want to be able to do with that." And I think that was one of the most forward-thinking positions to take
Yeah.
as a property owner. And yet we haven't seen anybody else doing that on scale since the 90s.
Right. Right.
And that is a time that has come. So when you're designing, not just for a corporate headquarters, but for a building at large,
Yeah.
somebody wants to put up a 20-floor building somewhere, 40 floors in Manhattan or something. How are you designing? How's Perkins&Will designing flexibility into
Yeah.
those large structures?
Yeah.
Because that has to be in the future, or candidly, that model is going to die.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think when it's a company that's going to own, that's building the building, owning the building, even if they intend to occupy the whole thing, like I said earlier, like we're talking to them about creative ways to think about expansion and contraction in their own building. Um, and we're looking at not only like subleasing, certain portions of the building, but creating, even if they say they're going to be the sole tenant, looking at, well, what happens if we introduce a multi-tenant corridor, making sure that that works with the building core, the way the building is designed from day one, so that it's not this like intrusive, it's not this like entire redesign if they do end up having to, split up the building in a lot of different ways.
Well, that wastes a lot of space. That takes a lot of
Exactly.
space.
So like kind of designing that in from day one, and not having like critical program in that portion, so that way it doesn't take a lot to add it in later. Um, I hope, and I've started to see it a little bit more in the States, but raised access flooring is super popular in Europe and Canada.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
that's something where I'm not seeing quite enough of in the States, but I hope that will become more and more popular, because that gives so much flexibility in terms of power, HVAC reconfiguration, to do it underfloor versus traditionally above.
Right.
So I think certain like flexible infrastructure that maybe some other areas of the world are a little bit more, it's more common. We're going to start to see, I think, more and more of that here. Um,
Well, all of those things are more expensive to build.
yeah,
And so there's a cost, and the only way to offset that cost is through increased efficiency
right, right.
overall. Do you think that the fact that corporate headquarters, or our corporate, I'll ask the question, I won't put it there. Do you think corporate headquarters are going to shrink, and that um, um, flexibility in corporate design, which will trickle down? There's always a trickle down theory to small and medium enterprise design, or even overall building design, is going to increase materially, and if so, how?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I do think that corporate headquarters are going to shrink. Like we're already seeing generally a reduction in square footage. And so yeah, I do think that is already starting to happen. The just square footage needed overall from especially large corporate companies is going down. And then I think, yeah, the flexibility, the more flexible kind of, it's called the kind of the hub and spoke model, right? Like the hubs are decreasing. I think the spokes are definitely increasing. Um,
I asked a question. Do you think the spokes are increasing in size or increasing in
I
number?
think increasing in number is
Yes. Okay,
what we've
good.
been seeing. Like companies are starting to think about a little bit more of a like dispersed footprint in real estate versus this like centralized footprint for a lot of reasons, like attracting talent, in different areas of the country, and I think attracting a lot of it is recruitment, like lower commute times and things like that, and just more convenience, right, to get into a hub with others that work together.
Well, I think that's the big foundation of the return to office argument.
Yeah.
It's not the office, it's
It's
the commute.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Commute. It's the robbing people of, on average, an hour and a
Yeah.
half to 2 hours a day, 10% of their life almost, just for the privilege of working for you.
Right.
And the people, the workers, are saying, "Yeah, you're not that cool. I'm not willing to donate another 10%
Right.
of my life to you. So
It's a huge
build me a
factor.
spoke. Yeah, build me a spoke. Let me go to a third party. Let me go to a business or
Right.
co-working center. Let me work remote, or put me on a." And that was a recruiting issue well before the
Yep.
pandemic for primarily the tech industry. You couldn't hire a senior engineer unless you had a flexible
Right.
workplace program in the 16, 17, 18 time period. That was a major problem. And I think that's when remote work really started
Yeah.
effectively. Pandemic just publicized
Kicked it
it.
into high gear. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it really did. And now I don't think we're ever going back.
No.
Well, the pendulum, I think, will swing.
Yep.
It won't be extreme. 90% remote work. That doesn't function well. But I think we'll end up in a 60-40 rule of some sort, of 60 in office, most likely, and 40% out. That changes the profile of commercial real estate
Right.
radically, because now, as an operator, as a company, I don't need 40% of the space that I had before.
Right.
And so, what does that do to the economics of a large building?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I see all the leases being downgraded in the large buildings, very few of them being upgraded.
Right. Right. Yeah. Most of the new projects that we're starting are, the companies have downsized and are just completely rethinking what the office is for. They're taking an opportunity with the downsize to, yeah, just like reimagine the office space and have it be something different than it was when it was much larger.
Well, I heard a corporate headquarters, a particular CEO that was kind of chest pounding and saying that he considered their corporate headquarters to be a cultural center, not an office, not a workplace. That was what they were trying to
Right.
accomplish. And I think that sounds good and might even be a good idea, a good thought process. Are you seeing that type of thinking across the board? Because I thought this was a one-off comment.
No, we are seeing that. I wouldn't say necessarily across the board, but yeah, we are seeing many of our clients. I would say the majority of our clients like wanting the office to be that cultural center that represent the like kind of like physical manifestation of their brand and culture. Even the smaller, smaller companies. One of our clients in particular, they are a remote first company, so most of their
Mhm.
employees work remotely, but they've downsized their real estate significantly into kind of one headquarters here in DFW, and they're reimagining it completely to be that like communal space. So it's got training rooms for like onboarding and learning where they're bringing people in, maybe once a quarter or once a month to do those things. Like big town hall spaces where they have their like all hands, meetings once a quarter with their entire group. Um, they've got like film studios where they're filming their online training since they are fully
Mhm.
remote. So just like totally different like types of space, I guess, than what we're used to seeing. But they're just using their headquarters in a very different way, where it used to be, just like desks and desks and desks and offices
Right.
everywhere. Now it's like, larger brainstorming rooms where they bring people together. I think they're only seeing their remote employees every other month. And so it's those kind of places where they're coming together versus, yeah, that kind of like individual heads down workspace that we saw in the past.
If I can ask, what's the size of that company? How many employees do they
Yeah,
have, and are they distributed?
they've got in DFW. That's a good question. They've got about 500 that will be like hybrid, like coming into the office 3 to 5 days a week in that headquarters, and otherwise they're all remote. And I don't know. There's thousands of remote.
Okay, thousands. So it's a large
Oh yeah,
company.
yeah,
It's a large
yeah.
company, and its business profile allows that much remote work, that sort of thing. It could be a large contact management
Right,
company
right.
or something of that nature.
Tech
What about
focused. Yeah.
small company? What
Mhm.
about small company? What about the 30 person company? Um, we talk about big buildings and big companies and all that sort of thing, and the little guys kind of, I don't know whether they're stuck in the past or they're just left out, of the most active design thinking. Um, uh, but I don't hear from large firms like yourself too many examples of what's happening in that sector. Are
Yeah.
they all going into business and co-working centers and breaking up, and so they don't need space anymore because they only have 10 employees and that works economically and flexibly? Or are they using others? Or are they designing the space themselves
Yeah.
in the same way? Because they don't have scale.
Yeah, yeah, we're definitely designing spaces for, 20 to, that kind of like 20 to 30 person office. And I'm sure there are some that are going to co-working spaces. But there are still a lot that do want their own space. And they're thinking about all of this on just a smaller scale. Like we designed, I've been doing, yeah, we designed one recently that was very similar to like a coffee shop kind of feel, like
Hmm.
where really like the office space, because there was only 25 of them, max on any given day coming into the office. We really designed a small space that felt like a coffee shop. It just had this like kind of vibe to it, more like a co-working space, but
Mhm.
it was theirs. They still wanted to be able to have their own space that they could, reflect their brand and their culture within it. And they did want to have still a nice size, training space to bring people in. The building that they were in just didn't have one of a lot of times the building does have like a
Yeah,
nice
sometimes
amenity space,
too.
right? And you don't need that. But this particular, client did want to have their own kind of larger meeting space that on a day-to-day basis, it functioned as kind of it opened up to the main kind of kitchen area, and so it just kind of functioned as a co-working area. But then they could close, this large kind of retractable door, and it became a training space when they had their monthly training sessions. So we are still seeing, yeah, these smaller companies, but just at a smaller scale, implement these same ideas.
Well, there are two questions that come out of that. So that's interesting thought. We've referenced, and you've referenced, gosh, a number of times in this conversation, kind of like co-working space,
Yeah,
kind of like things like that. Do you think that co-working or the old came from executive suites, the
right.
business center, the serviced offices, now rebranded as co-working, that whole evolution that started in the 1970s? I started in '79, so
Yeah.
I'm real. I'm the old guy, if you will. But do you think that that industry has materially influenced the way that corporate design is done today, to where corporate design is trying to emulate it a little bit?
I do think,
Or the way that larger buildings are trying to rethink the way they'll have to do lease models
right.
and things of that nature? On the one hand, that's one
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
And tie that in new design to the old economic model in real estate of total allocable overhead in square foot per person.
right,
Okay, that people used to say, well, I need, I can only allow 185 square feet per person, and I have to keep my total allocable overhead in operations down there. That's the old real
right,
estate
right.
department of the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, old thinking. But a lot of that's still out there, particularly in places like government.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, we still see that. But I just asked you 7 questions all at once. Tie that together if you
Yes,
can.
yes. So to answer your first question, I definitely think that co-working has like influenced workplace design. Um, and I think a lot of what influenced co-working was like kind of the hospitality sector and retail sector. So
Yes,
I think all of
agreed.
that, right? Like, um, and I think even more now that there's people working kind of in a hybrid way or remotely, we're taking influences from like those third places that people love to be in, like hotel lobbies and coffee shops and even like university libraries where you're kind of like alone together, like you're in this like space where you're with others but you're kind of working alone, so there's like this buzz behind you. I think people enjoy working in those kind of environments, and so we're definitely seeing those environments influence workplace design. And then let's see, your other question was, oh, about like, yes, square footage per person.
The math on that, because creating highly flexible workspace with, oh, lounge space, meeting
Yeah,
space, alone together, blah, 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 all these things is a lot more expensive.
yeah, yeah.
It's a lot more expensive,
Well,
and
actually, like what we're seeing, so there, what's also very expensive is a lot of private offices. And so open workspace can be, reasonable when you're not building so many, some of our clients still, like a lot of law firms, for example, will have majority of the space is private offices. That's very, very expensive, as you know, because you're
yeah,
delivering, HVAC and electrical and everything to each individual office. Whereas you can kind of create that third place, that kind of coffee shop feel in an open environment that is a lot of like furniture solutions and not as much like
yeah,
architectural, right? So there's ways to do it reasonably, where it's not, it doesn't have to be this like really elaborate, you know, Four Seasons hotel lobby, right? So I think there's definitely ways to to achieve it. But yeah, the square footage per person, I mean, we're not really, I haven't like looked at those metrics in a long time. We're looking at things like seats per person, like how many like work points do we have, like what are the
Mhm.
different places available for people to work from. We're looking at like so I think we're talking more in terms of work points and less in terms of like allocated square footage per person. And we're even breaking down for companies like how many work points do you want that have technology at them, like have a monitor. Um, how many work points do you want where it's just comfortable to work from a laptop at, and how many work points need to be inside of a formal meeting room versus out in the open and kind of a collaborative area. So we're kind of we're breaking it down like that because then they're able to see at any given point, like how many people can we fit in the office, how many can come in at one time.
Well, there's a variety of technologies that measure how many people are in
Right.
the office, how many warm bodies or how many desks for how many
Yeah.
hours, all that sort of thing. That's been going on for decades. And I think that the private office or even private cube model for each person has proven to only be about 40 to 60% density effective
Yeah.
in the past. So if you have a hundred or 1,000 employees, the likelihood that they're all sitting at their desk at any moment in time is zip.
Yeah.
And
Even
people do. Yeah,
pre-pandemic.
yeah.
Yeah.
This forever.
This has been going
We
on.
can go back to the Singer design concept and probably do the same
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
uh, a little bit. Um, so that's always been there. But I think that uh, companies today aren't, while they're designing, everybody likes a good looking office, everybody likes comfortable, nice space, etc. Designing as a strategy, a business strategy, has to be deployed today much more than it did in the past. In the past, we built corporate monuments to
Right.
ourselves,
Right.
uh, big, flashy, this and that. And the strategy was to announce how powerful and how capable you were as a corporation. Today, space is more of a strategic issue, of an operational issue.
Right.
An office is looked at more like a manufacturing floor in some respects. Of here we do this, here we do that, and how it all flows together
Yeah.
to get the product out. Um, how are you seeing strategic thinking evolving in space?
Yeah. I mean,
What we did, not what you designed yesterday, but what you will design 5 and 10 years from now. And I think that that's where we have to point, because space, I mean, it's bricks and mortar, baby. It's tough to change once it's designed.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're asking those big questions about, how will you be working in 5 years and 10 years time, um, to to the kind of key stakeholders in the early visioning, process, and trying to get them thinking strategically from the get go. And we're working with a lot of departments, operations, HR, technology, like within the organizations to really see, like try to forecast and look into the future. If the organization has a strategy arm within it, we're engaging with those folks and looking at what are their, what are they looking at in the future for this organization, because yeah, we really need to get to know their business and where their business is going in order to best support their business in the physical space.
How creative do you see companies being in that regard as they look forward? Are they sitting at their comfort level? Hey, this is the way we've always done it. Um, those most dangerous words in business, right?
Yeah,
um, versus, no, we think our company is going to evolve materially in the future, and everybody will have a partner desk, and the other partner will be a robot. I mean, that sounds kind of extreme, but how far are people really thinking
yeah,
into the future?
yeah. I think I wish they would think like, yeah, to that extreme, like farther into the future. We often like, will, you know give them examples of, some futuristic thinking about, how work will happen in the next, 10, 20, 30 years. But a lot of times they are thinking more in that like 5 to 10 year range, because that's usually what their lease is
Yeah.
for. And so, but even that is helpful because, yeah, I think we can only, yeah, we can kind of prompt them and show them some futuristic, videos and examples of what other companies are doing to kind of get their wheels turning a little bit. But it's really up, like you said, it's up to them and just how future and forward thinking are they going to be, and just how, especially if they only have a 5 year lease, like just how much are they really investing in their office space. And I think we are seeing, like you mentioned, brick and mortar, like we are seeing, and we're trying to focus more on furniture solutions and like modular solutions within office space, and less like built, gyp and things glued together and bolted to the floor. Because the more of that, the more just like ends up, not only is it just like bad for investment because you can't take it with you when you leave, or you can't sell it when you don't need it anymore, but it's not sustainable either. It's ending up in landfills at the end of these leases. And so we're really recommending modular solutions for millwork and for walls, and a lot of the office space being able to be, yeah, taken with them at the end of their lease term, or recycled, reused by a different tenant, instead of just completely demolished at the end of it.
No, I mean that is important in today's world overall, and it's all. I think most companies make that decision based in great part on
Yep.
economics.
Thankfully, a lot of that's like starting to come down in price and be a lot more, yeah, a lot more comparable to like traditional building.
Amber, thank you. You've been delightful, and I'm very grateful to you for sharing the positions that you and Perkins and Will have established as such a foundational firm architecturally in the world. I'd love to explore some other things with you another time if we have a chance. If somebody wanted to reach you to talk about their own design needs, I'm plugging you here as a firm. How would they do so?
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. And then by email, amber.wernick@perkinsandwill.com.
Perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you very, very much, Amber. Really appreciate your time today.
Yeah. Thank you.
If it's impacting the future of work, it's in the Future of Work podcast by allwork.space.